everything we've done, you've heard about so far, making long form, short form, blogging, it's failed if it doesn't actually reach out and grow an audience. Again, you began to hear in the last panel how you go about doing that. It's absolutely critical. The fun bit is making the thing. That's the fun bit. But we all have a duty to get the thing seen, the eyeballs in front of the screen. Otherwise, we failed. Now, the panel we've put together is an extraordinary panel because they've discovered the secret of stickiness. People going to your sites, driving to your site, and staying there. They've all grown their sites from a few thousand uniques to around 1 million in just a year or so. To prize from them the secrets of how they do it is our head of new media, Matt Tombers. Matt, come to the stage.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much. As Nick said, the fun bit is making the content. But also one of the responsibilities of people and one of the joys of people who are producing for the internet is, and for the broadband universe, because I think if this is more the broadband universe, is having that material be read, seen, viewed, experienced by people all around the world, because the broadband universe is a global universe. And you're right, these are some of these, and Nick was right, this is an extraordinary panel. These are luminaries from the broadband universe. We have Leo Brunick, who is the CEO of Patheos, which is probably, arguably, the fastest growing multi-faith website in the universe. Mike Collins from the Episcopal Church, Gwen Ashby from BelieveOutLoud.com, and Dan Paulus from the Interfaith Youth Corps, Interfaith Youth Corps. And what I would like each of them to do is to give a little bit about how they've managed to grow from a very small audience to, in Leo's case, 1 million uniques a month. When I first had a conversation with Leo a year ago, they had about 200,000 unique visitors to their website. A year later, they have over 1 million. That's an enormous accomplishment. Dan's website, which was relaunched a few months ago, is a Webby-nominated website, which has been doing multiple things for Interfaith Youth Corps. So I'd like to turn this over and start with Leo, and then we'll move to stage left, and then we'll open ourselves up for some questions. Thanks very much. Leo.
How to grow an audience.
Your secrets. Your secrets. I want your secrets.
Gosh, I wish there was a silver bullet. I'd have shot it, over and over and over again.
There isn't?
So I'm Leo Brunick. I'm the founder and CEO of a website called Patheos, and we're right around 1.7 million or so for unique visitors a month now, and it's growing a lot. So I'll get started with one of the things. They talk a lot about content being effective in context, and they talk about ads being effective in context. In our case, we try to build our own context, and what I mean by that is by getting writers, bloggers, authors, columnists that complement one another to sit next to each other, because growing an audience is hard. One guy grows his audience to 1,000 people, someone else grows their audience to 1,000 people. Together, several things happen. So it's more than 1,000 plus 1,000 is 2,000. They talk about what the other's writing. They interact with one another. They link with one another. But it's even more than that, because the content is what drives the audience, and the content gets better because they get in conversation. And anyone that's ever blogged before knows on some days, your muse is there, and you're entirely inspired, and the next day you're saying the crickets in the basement woke me up, because you can't really think of anything that you would want to talk about. There's a riffing off of that has a multiplier effect, and when you take those two and put them together in a community, and you take those communities and have the communities interact back and forth as community voices, I think that amplifies yet again. So you do all the things that you try to do with RSS and links and Facebook and Stumble Upon and Reddit and Dig and all the things you do in order to get people to find out about the content. But getting that interaction, I think, is what keeps the content coming out fast and hot and interesting, so that when someone comes by, they come by again.
Conversation, interaction. Now I'm going to skip over and I'm going to go to Dan Paulus over at stage left. Dan is, again, with the Interfaith Youth Corps. Dan.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here with all of you. I am delighted to share our story. We launched a new website almost a year ago, this week actually. And while we're clearly not close to 1 million hits, we've doubled our traffic, we've doubled the amount of time people spend on the site. I think we've accomplished a lot of good things, and one of the awards Matt mentioned was the Webby nomination for one of the best religion websites out there last year. So delighted about all of that. I have 3 quick slides that kind of tell this story. As you can see, the first slide was kind of our level set of where we were. It was a brochure site that basically held up our great founder and president, and as an asset in terms of his media contributions and kind of our recent media hits and programmatic descriptions. Didn't do much more than that, and we knew that. It was a very low bar that we needed to raise considerably. And one of the things we needed to do was move from a brochure site to a movement site. So we went through a pretty extensive process to find the right website partner to get us in that direction. And a couple of things happened in our process really quickly. We landed on Digitaria Interactive. They're based in San Diego. They have offices in San Diego and Los Angeles, and I think New York as well. They just won the OMMA award for Digital Agency of the Year, so we lucked out with a partner in many, many ways. And we came to them because they had done some outstanding work with other student leadership organizations that we were really impressed with. They convinced, evangelized, whatever word you want to use for me, this idea of segmentation, of user experience. I had known about it, but their whole methodology was you cannot be all things to all people. You just have to choose what you are, what you're really trying to accomplish, and then land on some basic audiences that you're going to commit to, and then build your site with a UX experience, as Paul had mentioned, that is just crucial to the success. So they did a lot of advanced work for us to develop 4 different personas, and they interviewed people, they interviewed us, they put together, I can show you all the really deep profile that they put together for each of these. One they called the advocate, the ideal idealist, the passive participant, the chaplain. So 3 of the 4 of those are student audiences, but at different levels of engagement. And the 4th is basically our campus audience, the chaplain, because our programs are focused on students and working with higher ed, faculty, and administration. The next thing was then, out of those user experiences, what kind of content did they really need and what type of programs were we trying to drive them towards? So that next set of bullet points on the right-hand side lay out basically what we were trying to accomplish in terms of the content for the site. We can go to the next slide. You can see where we landed. This is the home page of the new site. Clearly about students, not about Ibu Patel necessarily. He's in there. He's got his own page now. It's well positioned, all kinds of resources, what we need for him. But those 4 folks on the bottom, again, are exactly those personas that you just saw in the other iterations. So when you come to that page, we have a introductory video, which I'll speak a little bit about here briefly. But you know, who do I identify to join this movement? And you click on that path, and it very organically takes you through the content of the site. And again, very accessible in terms of the key landing pages we wanted people to go to, and as well as our media and tweets and social media aspects. Next slide. So user involvement, I'll just hammer home on this. As you go into each page, there's contextual links that take you organically to the next place you probably want to go if you've landed there first. And that's very well thought through, and that's the expertise I think that we got in spades in a special way with Digitaria. In addition to some pretty remarkable design work, I want to give them tremendous credit for the way they designed this site. I think that had a lot to do with our nomination, quite frankly. It feels like a youth site. It has a lot of energy. All those photos you see, I also want to call out. One of the smartest things I did for our organization was hire an online communications manager. I have a phenomenal young woman named Adrienne Baker who works for us, and I looked at hundreds of resumes. She was the only one that had design chops, so she could, all these photos you see were actually taken by her. She also is able to code on the back end. She's also has an editorial and journalism background. Very major catch for anyone, and I'm hugely grateful for that opportunity. She drives all this site. It's built on Drupal 4. We can talk about that offline if you want. Need someone who knows how to work Drupal 4. I would not suggest that for multiple people. Last thing I'll say is we really focus on social media integration. We had an online community when I came on board called Bridge Builders. It was built on a Ning platform that had a lot of functionality. We could get people to sign up, but once they were in, they didn't do anything. We did a lot of work to say, is this working? The answer was no. We shut it down, and it's all about Facebook and Twitter integration now. So our content is being piped out that way, and we're driving people. And those are the two main referring sites for us, Facebook and Twitter every month. Is that good?
If I heard two words from Leo, I think it was conversation interaction. From you, it's movement and user engagement. I think, let's go to Mike from the Episcopal Church.
I think what we learned initially was that our audience is what I would call fractured. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's the majority of our traffic certainly comes to episcopalchurch.org, but we also have a lot of traffic for YouTube and for Vimeo. We found that there are different audiences that are literally in each of those user groups. So we've got different content. You know, we've got different content that goes up on all of them. And we found that, you know, the more content we post, the more that people watch, which, you know, I guess it makes sense, but it wasn't something that we necessarily expected was really going to happen. We've also found out that community is really important, especially with something like Facebook and Twitter. When we post videos on Facebook and people comment and you respond, I think, one, they don't expect a response. And then you get a personal response, and it's usually it's one of three people who responds to them. You respond to them. And then it gives them, you know, ownership in a sense because they feel that they're a part of that community. So we found that it's engagement, it's having high quality content. Honestly, you know, you've got to speak to people in a common visual language that they understand. And if you give them stuff that's contemporary and looks like what they see on TV, then it's gonna resonate. But I think it's understanding that there are different platforms and that your main platform doesn't necessarily have to be your own URL.
Really, that was very good, Mike. And also, Mike is so you know, he is primarily a video producer, and much of the content that you work with on your site is video related. Gwen.
Thank you for having me. I'm Gwen Ashby. I'm from Believe Out Loud, which is a project of Intersections International. As you heard Joseph say in the blogging panel, we work to grow LGBT inclusive Christianity and then to mobilize LGBT inclusive Christians to work for equality in the larger society. I'm specifically going to speak about our Facebook page. Believe Out Loud is trans-denominational, but we have no brick and mortar churches. We have no people in the pews, as it were. And so we really needed a place to build community. So we often talk about Facebook as a tool to direct people to websites, to our blogs and so forth, and that's incredibly useful. We use our Facebook community that way. But we really think about it as an end of itself too. It is a community for us. So I'm a grant writer by trade, and so I have a few slides, and you'll see I'm very didactic in my process. But I wanted to lift up some of the best practices I have learned over the last few months in managing our Facebook page. I am not web savvy, and my 15-year-old laughs that I am in charge of Facebook at all. But we've had success in it, so take this with a grain of salt. But
so take that, my 15-year-old.
Take that, my 15-year-old. So some of these numbers may be hard to see, but I think you can see the trajectory we followed. January 1 is the low in 2011 is the next to nothing blurb on the far left. And up here at about 40,000 unique users is January 18th, 2012. So over a 12-month period, we have grown from 3,000 likes to almost 50,000. We're about 500 shy of 50,000 today. We have about 7,000 new likes coming in a month. We have 1.6 million monthly post views. Those are not unique, but our weekly views, our weekly total reach is 340,000. That sometimes reaches about 500,000, and that's through our various viral postings that happen. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to just slip through my best practices that I've come up with. It's really worth investing in paid advertising. It's very inexpensive. It works out for us at about 15 cents a click. We spend about $1,500 a month right now in paid advertising and get about 7,000 new likes, not all through the advertising, but that's really cheap. And of course, and you're paying by click, so you wouldn't need to invest $1,500. So it works for every price point. Post at least 4 times a day. The new Facebook algorithm, which I'll go over shortly, has a time decay factor that makes it really important that you keep your content relevant. This may, and I don't know how savvy everybody is on Facebook, and it may be obvious to some, but if you think about your community as being the go-to amplifier for all news content that is relevant to your audience. So for our audience, our low-hanging fruit, as it were, are people who are, they're the proverbial choir. They're on board with LGBT inclusion in the Christian church, and so they're interested in all developments about gay equality in the secular world as well as the church world. So we stay on top of, I do all sorts. I have probably 7 different Google alerts that come into my inbox in the morning. Zeit is another resource to do this, and you can really collect your content for the day that way. Cross-pollinate with your like-minded groups. Your home feed in Facebook is your easiest source of content. We get content from the Episcopal Church a lot, in addition to integrity. Just like with blogging, if you post somebody's content, they will post your content. A picture says 1,000 words. Pictures that are posted on the Facebook newsfeed automatically get a higher weight in the new algorithm. So pictures are really critical. Pictures that are branded with your logo are even more important. Mix your challenging content with your cheerleading content. Keep in mind that Facebook is, these are called social networks. You know, we come to be social, we come to be uplifted, we come to find community. So all of us have challenging content. We have the pieces, the action items, we have the things that people are angry about and they want to mobilize around. But we need to remind people that this is really a welcoming home, that there is a positive message to be found in your page. Write posts with user interaction in mind. That is just a specific reminder to ask people for feedback. Ask them to like you. Ask them to generate comments. If you automatically feed into Twitter, think about that character limit, 140 characters. Refer content back to your website, obviously. Next slide, please. Monitor your existing audience versus your target audience. For us, we're trying to, in expanding our audience, we need to reach not just the proverbial choir, but we need to reach people who are uncomfortable with the issue of LGBT inclusion. And that means that we're walking this very fine line. And so you always have to have your unique voice in mind. Be aware of the time commitments to staff. Blogging is a 24/7 job. Somebody referenced that earlier. So is Facebook, and it can kill you. So we are just now, it really can. We are just in the process of operationalizing a wider network within our office staff to take care of Facebook, and I can speak to that in volumes after this event. And then finally, the new EdgeRank algorithm, just keep these 3 things in mind: affinity, weight, and time decay. You're not going to show up in people's news feeds unless they have interacted with you. And so getting people to like, comment, and share your posts is essential, or else even if they like you, your posts are never going to show up in their news feed. Weight is a similar sort of thing. The posts with the higher likes are going to get ranked higher up in news feeds, and then the older the posts, the lower they fall. So once you get on this train of building this audience, you really have to nurture it, because your train could derail very quickly and you fall off that news feed. So.
And with the urgency of a contestant playing Beat the Clock, I would love to take a couple of questions real quickly. Do we have any questions from anyone? Anyone in the audience? Aha, we have one in the back.
Do you have any statistics off the top of your head about whether there's added value I'm sorry, do you have any comment about whether there's added value of video over pictures?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know anecdotally that pictures play better for us. Although it also all depends on how you frame your post. So, for example, I know when I link to a blog like Huffington, I'm linking to Huffington all the time, but I know a lot of the time people are not reading the full blog. But if your comment in there encapsulates, so for example, with a video, if your comment encapsulates what that video is about, then you can get the same sort of traction as you would if they even view it, if that makes sense.
I believe one of our former panelists has a question.
Yeah, I just had a quick question in terms of how you guys manage an editorial content. Do you guys operate like a news sort of organization, or do you have your own way of kind of managing? You said multiple administrators. How would you recommend managing them?
Leo, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. Not all content is created equal. Not all content is managed the same. And it's not just about whether it's in blog format or in some content management, other content management system, or what we would think of as an article or a weekly column. It's about who the person is, and it's about who their audience is. You always talk about personas. We have sections of the site that are more for the student-teacher audience. They receive editing that's at a different level than some of our bloggers who are speaking to a casual 4 times a day, stream of consciousness audience. We have, for us, the other key is that the editors actually have to be from the faith tradition, or in almost every case from the faith tradition, because editing isn't just about whether, if somebody misspelled a word, it's often trying to clarify concepts for people. So in the case of our 10 portals, they have a managing editor that's from within the faith tradition as well as their job skill, and for us that's key.
I would like to thank everyone on our panel. I know that there's some more questions out there in the audience. Hopefully after we have finished and we are off the air, you'll have a chance to talk to some of them individually and get your questions answered. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. And now I'm going to turn the microphone or the afternoon back over to Nick Stewart, who will be giving out the prizes.